Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. A transport interchange for Ramsey, funding for the health service, and compulsory boat insurance were some of the topics up for discussion this week. Here's Stu Peters with more.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Should there be a cap or a total block even on the number of live animals exported from the island? The transport of live animals for slaughter can be a contentious issue, but it is a growing trend in the island as farmers seek the best price for their animals. Although the idea is distressing to some people, it's argued the practice is needed to keep the island's agricultural industry viable. But an e-petition has been launched to try and halt the practice. Ramsey resident Erica Spicer started the Stop the Export and Fattening of Live Animals for Slaughter from the Island petition. Should there be a cap or a complete stop on the export of live animals from the island? Or is it just part of the agricultural industry of an island? And we've got Buster on. Hello, Buster.
Yeah, I mean, I used to fatten 200 head of cattle, buy them in September, October, and then they would be ready to go to the abattoir from the end of March and into April. But anyways, this year, farmers were going on that they were getting so much extra away. I thought, right, okay, I'm going to try a load. So put 12, and these are the best cow because they came from the best cow breeder on the island, and I paid dear, so I knew, they were going to sell extremely well. So weighed them at the steam packet and went across, and I had to go to the farm nearby to let them out. Well, we dropped that backboard. Oh, Stu, I'm not kidding you, I'm no softy. But what a mess.
Really?
There was steam coming out of the top. And because they were packed in tight, tight-ish, they were covered in muck. And they would, from being light brown, they were dark brown with the amount of sweat and muck.
So from your experience then, actually having done this, you don't think it's a good idea exporting livestock?
Stu, I vowed then, and I never will ever export livestock. It was beyond. If the MSPCA had turned up, I would fully understand if they charged us with cruelty.
Gotcha.
It really knocked the wind right out of my sails.
Well, that's interesting that somebody's actually done it then, because I think that most farmers say that it doesn't really matter where the animal's slaughtered. So it's interesting to hear the point of view that you've done it and you don't think it's humane.
Oh, it's not a question of things, Stu. It certainly wasn't humane. It was inhumane. And it was interesting, because of the 12 kilos that we kind of looked as if we'd lost on the way out, we weighed the wagon empty coming back at Liverpool, and then we weighed this back here, the steam packet, and there was 2 kilos in it. So in that journey, they had lost 10 kilos, but you could stress they were a nice kind of light brown. They were just absolutely plastered.
Gotcha.
And it was,
well, let's not go into too much graphic detail because people are probably getting the sandwiches ready, but yeah.
Yeah, but there can never be a reason to ship animals like that. It doesn't matter what the money is. It's just
not right.
A no-go area.
All right, fair dues. Well, thank you for calling, Buster. Like I say, it's interesting to talk to somebody who's actually gone through the process from the farmer's point of view. I expect other farmers might disagree. This came in earlier on. In advance of Talking Heads, I'd like to put some questions on the table. Namely, if we ban live exports, we would by definition have to ban live imports. And where does that leave us for breeding, genetics, etc.? We'd also have to ban the import of any meat in which the animal concerned was subject to a journey of equal or longer length to that which our exported animals would be, to avoid upholding double standards. That's a point, I suppose. In terms of, I'm sure that you could have exemptions to any rules about import and export of live animals, so that animals brought in for breeding or genetics or whatever would be excluded from any legislation. What would our acceptable journey to slaughter length be? agree. We'd also have to give serious consideration to restricting the movement on off the island of horses and other animals that travel for competitions, etc., in much the same conditions as our fat stock animals do. Again, I expect that there could be exemptions written into any legislation that would solve that problem. Does Brexit now mean that we can restrict imports of meat? That would help, says Gary. So the farmers want us to buy local, but they won't use local. Double standards, bit confusing. Okay. Stu, last year on the programme, Minister Ronan quoted that 70% of the meat consumed on the Isle of Man was not Manx. That's much too high a percentage, isn't it? It seems the Manx farmer is sending a majority of their livestock to the UK to be processed. So what are we subsidising the Manx farmers for? It's an absolute disgrace. Remove all subsidies with immediate effect and save £7 million of taxpayers' money straight away. That from Stan in Crosby. I don't care in what location animals are slaughtered. It's the cost to me from the supermarket or butcher that interests me most. How about a good deal for the consumer for a change, says Alan. Yeah, okay, I can see that as a point of view, Alan, but I mean, surely you're bothered about animal welfare, aren't you? I think most of us are. You see, I eat meat, but mine's grown on a meat tree. It's not part of... I can't look at a cow in the face and think, yes, I'd like to eat you. No, that doesn't work at all. It's got to come pre-packaged. What rubbish causing stress and upset to animals when we're going to slaughter them? Not necessarily, no. And the other thing is that apparently the meat doesn't taste as good if the animals are stressed before they're dispatched. Although it's not something that I'm an expert about because, as you'll have guessed, it's something that I don't like to really think about. Gorn and his brainwave of the Countryside Care Scheme turning farmers against farmers, and now with all the animals going out, turning the Manx public against farmers. Very sad. Headed back on animals through the meat plant, and those who ship lose their payments. In summer, there isn't enough to feed our own people. What a very sad situation. Stu, the answer is simple. Now we have Brexit. Bring back the meat derogation, says Alistair. Well, somebody else mentioned that earlier on. I don't know if we could. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me that if we are overproducing the amount of meat that we can actually consume in the island and we're exporting what's left over, then great. But if we're importing meat, then we're getting a false figure, aren't we, really? And it makes perfect sense that as long as the price is right, that's the only trouble with this. People go to the supermarkets to buy meat because it's usually a lot cheaper than you pay in the butchers if you buy Manx meat, or usually is the case anyway. The farmers that support the local meat plant support employment and provide fresh meat for local consumers and are able to run successful businesses, so those that export live get more money to create an unlevel playing field, which is unfair on a small island. Okay, Stu, it's acknowledged that the most stressful time is the loading and unloading, so how do they get to the meat plant? Are we going to see the animals being walked through the streets like in the old days, says Brian. Yeah, well, Stu, transport of animals for slaughter. Yes, it would always be better for animals to be slaughtered here and the carcass is transported. It'd be better for the animals and better for the loss-making abattoir. But when farmers can get at least £100 per head, even after expenses, they have little choice. Well, I can understand that. We need to give the meat plant enough animals to process so that they can make a profit and pay farmers the price that they'd get across. In the post-Brexit world, this may mean a return of the derogation. All supermarkets at least stocking some Manx meat, particularly Tesco and the Co-op. The only Manx produce I see in the Co-op is dairy, says Jane. He obviously had them packed in too tightly, says Dave, talking about Buster's call earlier on. I don't know. Stu, this petition and other recent ones raise the general point that while an online petition can now be set up on demand in support of any cause, there's no opportunity for the opponents to express a view short of floating a counter-petition or arguing that if 2,000 people on the island vote for a seductive proposition, then the other 80,000 didn't. Perhaps the proponents of online petitions would gain greater credibility if they were structured to record votes both for and against their proposition, says John W. That sounds just like the passengers when getting off the steam packet, not just the livestock. Okay. Let Buster and Co try running the meat plant and make it pay and match UK prices at the same time, says Joe. That seems to be the trouble, doesn't it? It's the way that the meat plant operates that seems to be at the root of this problem. If the meat plant could operate efficiently and to get the right sort of price that people can get, then they're not going to bother exporting livestock, are they? Buster was right just to tell it like it is about the actual condition of his livestock after the transportation of them. It's most definitely cruel to make animals suffer prior to slaughter. Good on Buster for speaking out. That's from Jermaine from Douglas. Thank you, Jermaine. I don't think we've had Jermaine on before. Well said, Buster. I fatten over 100 cattle and I won't let my cattle be shipped to slaughter. Why should they endure a boat ride down the motorway to be slaughtered when half an hour down the road, fully in support of the local meat plant? Good, thank you. I'm a driver and I transport animals on and off the island on a regular basis. The welfare of the animals is paramount to both the driver and the farmer. We always make sure that the animals are comfortable and fine. If the cattle you call and mentioned were brown and sweaty, then they'd been packed too many of them in. The welfare of the animals is absolutely paramount to us. Good. Well, there's somebody with an alternative point of view on that one. Thanks for getting in touch. It's always nice to get balance on the programme from our listeners. Talking about Buster, here we have another of his fairy stories. Live export is legitimate trade and happens the world over. No dogs or horses on the steam packet then. How many of the people signing this petition actually buy Manx meat? Well, it did cross my mind that, 1,000 people could well be vegetarians who don't want meat to be processed at all. Petitions aren't worth the paper that people scribble on. Do-gooders, liberals, there's no shortage of them. If this was legislated, that would confirm there's more democracy in North Korea. We'll be talking about that later. Those farmers who export live animals for slaughter should forfeit the Manx subsidies given to them. According to JC. The meat plant meeting last week, it was stated that 80% of the meat produced is exported and that 80% of the meat that we consume is imported. A good start in redressing the balance would be if Manx residents started buying Manx meat. Also, there should be something to stop restaurants advertising locally supplied meat, which is actually imported frozen and can be from anywhere in the world. Pumped full of growth hormones, antibiotics, etc., which our farmers are not allowed to use. Local restaurants advertising locally supplied meat. Right, okay. So I suppose that's one of those technical differences. Locally supplied meat means that they've just bought it on the island, I suppose, whereas locally reared meat is a different thing altogether. Yeah, that's wrong. The only trouble with this is that people, and I agree with you, it seems crazy that 80% of our meat is exported, and yet we're importing 80% of the meat that's consumed here. The only trouble is that you've got to be very careful of creating a situation where you've got to buy Manx meat and you've got to pay the price that the farmers demand. A lot of people just simply can't afford that, and that's where the supermarkets score, because I think the imported meat is generally cheaper, I think generally. Stu, I was a butcher many years ago. Animals were shipped in and out of the island. They were always rested prior to slaughter at the old Lake Road slaughterhouse. Money does come into the equation. That's from Norman. Thanks, Norman. Also, anyone who buys imported meat is actually supporting live exports. Okay. Stu, I've always disregarded petitions because they only tell one side of the story. Perhaps they should be made illegal, says David H. Well, launch a petition, David. Online, it won't cost you anything. Survey Monkey or somebody like that, and find out whether or not people think that petitions should be made illegal. Is it not time the chief vet, NFU and the minister to come on air to explain to our listeners what's involved in shipping livestock? Well, I think most of us probably understand, don't we? Or we've got a reasonable idea about what's involved. Horses are regularly taken off the island by ferry for competitions, veterinary care and buying and selling. Steam Packet are very strict regarding the sea conditions for live animal transport. Providing the animals are cared for in transit, they don't appear to be distressed, says D. Thank you, D. Stu, the MSPCA full of dogs and cats, yet people still go away and buy more. What about the stress on them? It's just not fair. Okay. How many years ago was Buster exporting? Was it on the old Peveril? Asks May. I don't know. This from Wendy. My opinion on the subject is it's totally barbaric treating these poor creatures with such cruelty by transporting them across to goodness knows where. Plus the fact is that there are so many abattoirs sprouting up around England which favour the halal way of slaughter, which is sheer cruelty. If the farmers want to sell their meat, they should slaughter here on the island. Downright cruelty, it makes me sick. That's from Wendy G. Cattle are packed in tightly to stop them from falling over during travel, causing a greater welfare issue than just being close together. Exports are due to local incentives not being great enough. Cause and effect. Okay, interesting thought. That it makes sense now you mention it. Stu, I would run the meat plant on the basis that farmers would accept quotas to avoid overproduction. All right, that's from Charles. Buster's not farming now, as far as I know, and hasn't done for more than 20 years. Also, no cattle allowed on the Manannan, only on the Ben Macree, and it's only if the captain says it's safe to do so, weather conditions, so they never go to Liverpool. As farmers, we care for our animals and their welfare and do the best that we can. We have to make a living, a very poor one at that, for the hours that we do. Animals do get hot and sweaty just bringing them in from the fields, but they calm down. Good. It's nice to hear comments from people who are actually involved in this. It's all we can all have our point of view on things like this, but we don't. I mean, I don't really know what's involved in taking animals through the food chain. Don't really want to be honest. But I presume that they're dealt with humanely, and I think most people feel the same way about it. But it is good to get some farmers on talking about this. Maria called. Why can't everybody go vegetarian? Well, we don't want to, Maria. I know people will object to that. You think, but I don't like to see any animals killed. I don't agree with killing animals. Full stop. But if they have to, then they shouldn't be shipped off Ireland. So if we have a meat plant, the farmer should use it. All right, Maria. How many people that are saying that we, the farmers, should not be allowed to export our animals look for locally produced produce that's locally produced, not locally sourced? Yeah, important distinction. Not many, I bet, because that is their right to buy what they want to or can afford, as it's our right to sell our animals where we can to get the best price. We care for our animals and we vetted every step of the way, and all welfare codes are met. The government vets won't have it any other way, and rightly so. Good, thank you. Clearly from somebody who's involved in the industry. Manx people need to get a life instead of moaning on anything that doesn't suit them. Stop all these petitions. If the farmers want to ship livestock away to get a better price, so be it. Should stop all the backhanders from the taxpayers, says Pat. Stu, I think this proves how terrible social media can be. This whole petition is based on a bunch of lies and a picture from a third world country which portrays a completely different story from what's actually going on, does it? It's not only people from the island that have signed it either. People from all over the world have. It's hardly doing any good for the island, is it? People need to do some research first. Oh, that's interesting. I've not actually seen the petition, so it's you think it's misleading people. I suppose, if you were to sort of post a link to a petition like that on the Quinoa Collective web page or something like that, you'd get a gazillion signatures straight away. So there is a limited value, I suppose, to online petitions.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Does Ramsey need a transport interchange? Ramsey commissioners say it's hopeful that plans for a new facility for the town are finally gaining momentum. Questions were raised in the House of Keys yesterday after proposals were formulated and subsequently shelved by planners 5 years ago. Infrastructure Minister Ray Harmer says he's committed to progressing the so-called Ramsey Transport Interchange, which would merge bus, tram and roadway links in the town centre. What do you think about this? Good idea? First text, how about Ray Harmer spending some money on all the terrible roads in Peel, for example, the dreadful potholes, says Janet. I get the impression, Janet, as a motorist, that we come fairly well down the pecking order in terms of things that need to be sorted out by the Department of Infrastructure. So, yeah, they seem to have money for horse trams and for interchanges and this, that and the other, but I don't know about roads. Certain roads maybe, but it seems that we're fairly well down the order of things that need to be done. Now, I understand that the department's got to prioritise, but the other thought is, I think that the authorities quite like the idea that the roads are potholed and that slows everybody down. Because rather than doing what they ought to do, which is to speed everything up, make everything more efficient, they seem to be quite keen to slow everything down so that there are fewer accidents, which I suppose in a way is a good way of traffic calming. Let's go to the lines. We've got Wilf on from Ramsey. Hello, Wilf.
Nothing. I don't think anything of it.
Oh.
I was against it from the word go several years ago.
Why?
I was the only one that voted against it. I was the only one of two that voted against it this time.
Why are you against it, Wilf?
Well, it's just to create a lot of work for somebody.
Oh, right.
I don't know what, but a lot of work for somebody.
Yeah.
I took the trouble to go to the bus station and ask the man in charge there, the bus driver, what was wrong with the shed, the station. Well, he said, "Come here and look here." Well, the floor was cracked.
Yeah.
But that's only a concrete floor. Now, the actual structure of the building is perfect as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we just heard the minister answer that question in Keys, and he said that apparently the back wall wasn't safe, the roof wasn't safe, the concrete slab wasn't safe.
Something for to get this thing pushed through.
Ah, right.
There was a girder, an upright girder, being cleared off, the plaster taken off from the outside several years ago to see how good it was.
Yeah.
They never put the plaster back. They never painted the girder, and it's as good as the day it was put up.
Got you.
I'm a metal man. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Now, they said that the roof was timber and all that. It's metal framed.
Oh.
Not timber, it's metal framed. There's nothing wrong with the metal frames. They're absolutely perfect. I removed a door for those people many, many years ago and installed it again on a place on the quay in Ramsey. And the hole was blocked up. You can see where it's been. But there was nothing wrong with it then, and it's just the same now. Now, I asked the bus driver, I said, because part of this thing was that they had to put the buses across the road in race time.
Yeah.
Now, I asked the bus driver, and he said, we don't care where we go or where they put our place. We're not interested. But I said, how long has this place been up? Since the 20s. So I said, well, you've always then had to put the bus across the road or whatever since then.
Yeah.
Well, yes, it's never bothered us. And I said, more so in the old days because you had more practices.
Of course.
Well, yes, we got less practices now. It doesn't make a heap of the difference. I also asked them, I said, now you've seen the plans of what they're going to do at the tram station, where they're going to put the buses and all that. Has anybody asked you about negotiating these tight corners and things? No. Nobody's been asked the bus driver, can they negotiate it?
So you think it's a bit of a Rolls-Royce scheme that's redundant? You know, it's not needed.
A Rolls-Royce scheme, no, I think it's a load of crap because it's the whole thing. Destroying a perfectly good, we've got a perfectly good tram station, and nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
People who come, they've got some inflated idea, well, that's what they're saying, that it's going to bring business to Ramsey.
Oh, I see.
They're going to say, people is going to come on the tram
with the briefcases.
In Ramsey,
right.
And on the buses to shop in Ramsey. People go on the tram because they want to ride on the tram.
Of course, yeah.
They don't come on the tram to go shopping.
Well, I mean, that was one of the arguments about the horse trams in Douglas, wasn't it? In the pro lobby was talking about it as a vital part of the transport infrastructure, and the people who were against it were saying, well, yeah, but it's only ever used by holidaymakers. It's not part of any integrated transport link as such. I mean, can you imagine coming down to Douglas from Ramsey and then catching the horse tram with your briefcase? You know, it just doesn't work, does it?
Yes. Well, actually, we've people think, let's say from the last 20, 30 years, people coming over from England and going having a ride on the tram think that the tram station we've got in Ramsey is the tram station it's always been. That tram station was rebuilt, but it's the station that they know, and they want to come back to that station.
All right, fair dues. So no need at all.
You see, they altered it all in Laxey.
Yeah.
But it's no better.
All right. So according to Wilf, no need to change anything. That the place that's there already is perfectly usable. Maybe a lick of paint or whatever, and some polyfiller for the crack in the concrete slab. Apart from that, it'll do the job. What do you think? Hi Stu, what's urgently needed in Ramsey is a pram station, says Graham. Really? I don't think you can take one in and come out on another, though, can you, with a pram? Tram station already has a waiting room toilets, perfectly adequate. This should not be demolished. Use what we have. No grandiose schemes. Just use common sense. Well, there's somebody who's echoing what Wilf was saying. Consolidating facilities using existing assets makes a lot of sense. You've got two very rundown facilities and an opportunity to create something good and free up some land for development in the process. Whilst they're at it, spend a very modest amount and turn the sea terminal in Douglas into a bus station. Joined up thinking should be encouraged. Good, okay. Always nice to get different points of view. Oh, for God's sake, Stu, don't you know these old duffers don't do change? This isn't me saying. I'm just reading what somebody else says. Stick 2 fingers up at Ramsey, spend the money on Douglas. If it's so unsafe, why are they still allowing people to use it? If it's that unfit for purpose, it should be taped off, says Alan. Reasonable. More of your comments on a transport interchange for Ramsey. I wish Wilf would shut the flip up. You see what I did there? He's so negative, knows everything. Time that you had some sort of a filter, says Neil. Well, everybody's entitled to a point of view, Neil. If it was down to Wilfie Young, nothing would get done in Ramsey, says somebody else. That statement by Wilf with the robust language made my day. I was doubled over with laughter. That guy should be in Tynwald, says James. There you go. Bit of balance to it all, I suppose. Totally unnecessary. If we've got money to spend, then spend it on things that benefit the people of the whole island, like fixing the roads. And that from a Ramsey resident as well. Where's the money coming from? Great ideas. Keep getting told that there's no money to do it. Okay, Stu, this Ramsey interchange has all the hallmarks of Douglas Prom. Draw up a scheme involving everything, gets rejected, then you make up an even more fanciful idea, probably will now include a canal so cruise ships can dock at the tram station. In connection with the new runway down Parliament Street, so that we could get transatlantic passengers here. Just needs an open mind to keep the DOI design guys in work for years. Love the idea of that. An element of cynicism, maybe, who knows? The government policy to prop up the economy after the crash was to set an amount of capital spending, with this job given over to the DOI, so they're always looking for ways to achieve spend. This in Ramsey appears to be part of that, as the grand scheme for Douglas Prom was also. Well, that makes sense, I suppose. I mean, on the basis that so many people complain about the roads, I'm not that bothered about the roads. I mean, yes, we've got some fairly rough roads. I don't think we're unique in that, and it would be lovely to have them all billiard table smooth, but I don't think that's ever going to happen, given the fact that most of them are just built on cart tracks originally. Given that so many people complain about the state of the roads, I'm just amazed that the department don't spend more of the resources doing things like that. Don't know. Bus interchange, it'll never happen. It's just something for Manx Radio to put on their news bulletins every half hour for weeks. Boring. I'm guessing that's somebody that doesn't live in Ramsey and doesn't go to Ramsey or use buses or trams or anything like that. We don't make the news, we just report it. So if the politicians are talking about an interchange in Ramsey, then that's why we cover it on our news. I mean, that's the job, isn't it? If Wilf knows so much about metal, why doesn't he fix up the iron pier in Ramsey? Oh, I expect he'd jump at the chance of doing that, as long as somebody was prepared to pay him for it. That's the thing. It's I'm sure he could do it. It's whether or not somebody would pay him to do the job. Let's go to the lines. We've got John on. Hello, John.
This is just the latest phase in the destruction of Ramsey.
Oh.
Which started, I think, I may be wrong, the 60s or the 70s, when they pulled South Ramsey down and built the concrete jungle down there.
Right.
Then they go on, they put all these paving stones in the Parliament Street, totally out of keeping with the character of the town. They look ridiculous. Then they take the marketplace, they revamp that, something that was working perfectly all right before as a big roundabout with a car park in the middle. Now you've got that stupid little roundabout which everybody ignores and just drives over. Now they want to do this interchange. I mean, it really makes you laugh. They make it sound as if you've got buses arriving every 5 minutes, high-speed electric trains shooting off to Douglas every few minutes. You know, a bus, an interchange hub. It's a joke, the whole thing. The ideal place for the bus station, if they want to move it, is across the road in the car park where used to be Albert Road School.
Yeah.
Now, that is a massive space. It could be partly car park, partly bus station. You know, the whole thing is a joke. I wonder, these people with letters after their name that think these things up, they're living in cloud cuckoo land.
You sure it's not just that you don't like change, John?
Sorry?
You sure it's not just that you don't like change?
No, I don't. Change, providing it keeps the character of the town in place. Yeah. I was brought up in Ramsey, and I was always brought up to believe that planning, you had to keep, whatever you were planning to do, you had to retain the character of the surrounding area.
Yes.
But these mad ideas they've got. They're crazy.
Right.
I mean, they really are. I don't often agree with Wilfie Young, but I must admit he was on the ball this time.
All right, fair dues. Thank you for your call, John. Money for this over-the-top scheme would be better spent to reduce the ridiculous waiting lists at Nobles, which would benefit everybody, says somebody else. The grand scheme for Ramsey has been scaled down already because they want to use some, if not all, the money to refurbish the horse stables in Douglas, according to somebody that I've been talking to, says David. My thoughts are, why is the Isle of Man Parliament spending time dealing with this when it should be a commissioner's problem? They should be dealing with the island's financial problems in the House Keys. Okay. If you give Wilf the job of doing up the Iron Pier, he'd be in his scrapyard in no time at all. That'd solve the thing one way or another, I suppose, wouldn't it? The waiting area in Ramsey bus station's a bit dire and could really benefit from an upgrade, but I guess any decent shelter will disappear, as it has done with the modernised Douglas terminal. It's patently obvious that the planners and designers rarely, if ever, use the facilities. If they're in ahead or not, this is what they in. Can't understand that. It's something they need to think about. Better facilities and clearer information would be wonderful and may even encourage more use of the buses. That, according to Claire. James called, I think the tram station is quaint and it looks lovely. I don't know what plans they have for it, but I think a lot of people who use the tram enjoy getting on and off at the station. It's a lovely old-fashioned place. As far as the buses are concerned, they've been parking up by the old swimming pool during TT for a long time now, so I'm not sure this interchange is something that Ramsey needs. Horse trams, the electric trams, steam railway are all reasons people come here. They like the heritage. I think they should think very carefully before they get rid of aspects of any of that. Modern change is not always for the best. Ramsey being ruined, Old Albert Road school site being used for new shops, when across the road in Victoria Mall only one shop is there being used and the place is rotten and derelict. Last thing Ramsey needs is more empty shops. Seems a no-brainer to put the bus station on the old school site and redevelop the Victoria Mall for the shops. Okay, Stuart, I've got to agree with you, caller John, about the interchange. It's Ramsey. It's like these buzzwords, moving forward. I heard Anne Reynolds, the harbour woman, say the other morning, the Ben hit the wall, but moving forward... Stu, who employs these people. It's not just in politics and authority, it's also in businesses. You know, people love these marketing phrases, buzz phrases. Sadly, we vote for MHKs but have no say in the civil service. Maybe we need to flip it. Oh, watch out, that phrase might get pinched to move forward with, says Ian. Right, okay.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is the answer to the overspending health to allocate more money for the service in the first place? Is the answer to the overspending health to allocate more money for the service in the first place? The DHS sees 11.1 million overspend over the last financial years to be formally investigated by the Public Accounts Committee. Written submissions are being taken by the Clerk of Tynwald at present from professionals and members of the public who've had dealings with the department in any capacity. The Minister, Kate Beecroft, says a greater degree of financial prudence is required, especially at Nobles Hospital. Is the answer to put aside more funding for health and social care in the first place, or would that fail to address the need for savings and efficiencies in the long run? Saw an interesting thing on Facebook, I think, last night or this morning, from somebody who's in the health job, and it was comparing the price of paracetamol. You can buy them at Tesco's, probably other supermarkets as well, for something like 25p a pack, 5 bob in all money. Whereas if you get a prescription for paracetamol, especially if the prescription is free, it costs the health service about a tenner. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realise that that's just crazy. So things like that maybe shouldn't be prescribed, in that, you know, it's just nuts to be spending that kind of money on things that people can buy in a supermarket, isn't it? Or is it just me? Let's go to the lines. We've got Harry on, who's got a point of view on this. Hello, Harry.
The health services, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have got a gripe against them because whether you're fortunate or unfortunate to work there, I was up there for 10 years and I've seen how they used to squander money and waste money and make sure that they spent just enough to get the same budget the next year, you know.
Yes.
I mean, there's so much waste goes on up there, Stu. It's unbelievable. I mean, I've said to various health ministers and different people that I'm perfectly willing to be a whistleblower.
Right.
I don't care. You know, I really don't care. The way they've treated me and the family, I don't care now. But it's just that I'm sick and tired of seeing them on whinging about the benefit, and they haven't got enough money there, and
Yes.
they're trying to balance the books and all. It's nonsense. It's so easy to do, and they don't have to do, like I said to you the last time I think I was on to you, that they don't have to penalise sort of people if they want their tonsils out or if they want grommets removing.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have the power to tell surgeons and physicians who've studied a long time what to do, you know.
Right.
You know, they don't seem to want to... They don't accept people's responsibility that have done really well in these jobs, you know.
So where is the wastage? I mean, is it in the way that they sort of buy stocks and materials and things, or is it the use of agency nurses and staff, or where is the biggest wastage, do you think, Harry?
All of that, really. I mean, when they go for a budget and how much they want to spend, and then the wastage of money that they buy things that they just stick in what they call a disposal hold up there that never get used.
Really?
And the amount of staff that they have, when I started, I was a porter and there was 2 porters there, and now there's about 30 up there, you know.
Right.
And it's because certain people work and certain people don't work.
Yes.
You know, it's like you need to weed out the dead wood. You know, there's so much going on up there that, you know, it needs... They had an independent review, but it's like I said to Catherine before, they know when this review is going to happen. They know when the Chief Minister is going to visit. They know when MHKs are going to visit.
Of course.
So they prepare for it.
Yes.
You know, so they don't see really what's going on up there.
So is that the answer? More whistleblowers, more people who are prepared to just stand up and say, hang on a minute, this is crazy?
Well, I've realised for a long time, Stu, that there's so many people up there without a spine. You know, nobody will take the initiative and just do something, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas if they just all got together and just said, listen, this is enough, we're being treated this way, this isn't right, we should do something. You know, it is the health services, we're looking after people's health.
Absolutely.
Mental or physical.
Although it's the sort of thing that we hear about an awful lot of government departments, and whether it's true or not, I don't know, but, you know, in terms of people spending money, otherwise they're not going to get it next year, whether they need to or not, and, you know, wastage on materials and on staffing and things.
It's honestly, Stu, it's incredible the wastage of money that's up there. That they wouldn't need anything like the budget that they're looking for if they just run it properly.
Right.
And if they could get a really, truly independent review, and as I say, they turned up on the doorstep unannounced and they didn't know what was going on, and I'm prepared to take them round and show them the different things, you know.
Well, better than that, when I'm elected benevolent dictator for life, I'm going to employ you as my procurator fiscal or something equally weighty.
I'll hold you to that.
Yeah, and you can be the person who does that. You can go around with a clipboard and decide where we're going to save the money, because I'm sure you're right. I'm sure there is an awful lot of waste.
I would gladly be a consultant for government in any department they want, you know, because I've seen it with so many different departments.
Good stuff.
Working in my dad's business for 25 years, you get to work with all these different people and you see how the money's squandered and wasted, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, you do. All right, thank you very much, Harry. Nice to talk to you as ever. Afternoon, Stu. I think the priority of government must be health and education. Everything else can fall into place after that. Good thing about our NHS is that the government's not starving it like the UK one is doing, but I think it should get more funding. If they can give 50 million quid away to the business sector, they can give a few more million to the NHS. And before anybody says where would the money come from, let's not forget all the millionaires living in the island who could pay more in taxes. That from James. Let me just pick you up on a couple of points, and I'm not saying I disagree with the thrust of what you're saying, James, but the government isn't giving 50 million quid away to the business sector. They're investing 50 million quid to try and make more money that they can then spend on things like the health service. You know, all this thing about, the government are just handing out 50 million quid free. That isn't the case. The government is investing 50 million quid in things that are going to bring jobs and money, and it's an investment. It's there to bring a return, like Pinewood was. You know, at the time people were saying, they're just giving money away to Pinewood. No, it was an investment and it paid off very well. Now, whether this will do as well, I don't know. That's what everybody's hoping for. And, you know, yes, there are lots of millionaires living in the island who pay very little in terms of tax compared to the rest of us. And that aggrieves me as much as anybody else. You know, I paid my full rate of tax and all the rest of it. So I'm not keen on this idea either. But I do worry that if we try to squeeze the rich, they'll just disappear. So any money that we're getting from them at the moment, because they're paying less tax, is probably better than we'd get if we were too awkward about it. And it's one of those questions of pragmatism, I think. You know, philosophically, I don't think that they should pay less as a percentage of their income in tax than I do. But if we are getting money from them for, we're not having to do anything much in return, and the money that we get from them is considerable and it can go into things like public services, then is it a case of just biting your lip and getting on with it? The curse and problems of all government departments, including health services, middle management, a drain on expenditure. When will our politicians wake up? It was in a few manifestos last year, but as to date, no action. That's from Paul. Hey boy, the overspend within the DHSC is mostly down to the employment of far too many chair polishers and clipboard huggers. But that's government all over. Too many chiefs, not enough engines. Facts from Frank. Thank you, Frank. Well, that's two people that seem to be of a mind on that one. They need to pay nurses here more than the UK so we can get the staff rather than paying agency staff 3 times the wage. A basic agency nurse can earn more than some managers, says Dave. Yeah, it's not right, is it? It seems to the quite often we get things like this where we outside the system look at it and think, well, that's an easy fix, we'll just do that. And invariably, these things aren't that easy, and there are all sorts of other factors that come to bear on it. And, at least I've learned to say, well, we do employ people who are experts at these things to solve it. If it was that simple, you kind of think that they'd have done it. I might be wrong, maybe they don't. Stu published the detailed accounts for the last few years. We can all see what the costs are for locums and bank staff and how they've increased, how much the increases are for civil compensation claims, liabilities and costs. And I'm told that there are a lot going through as well. Giving more money is not the answer, while management and organisations obviously and acknowledged as being poor and out of control. Okay. I don't get this whole population age shift argument. Surely if we have such an aged population, then these are the ones dying too, not kids or younger people. It's becoming boring now, says Jamie. Demographics, Jamie. Stu, I was very surprised last time Kate Beecroft was on Manx Radio asking for something, 11 million quid, when she admitted that she'd not been to Nobles to talk to staff in 3 months since she was appointed as minister. Well, being fair to Kate Beecroft on that, or anybody else in that position, you don't necessarily need to be sort of, hands-on in the factory. Her job as minister is to be looking at the big picture, and she's got any number of experts working for her at the hospital who are hands-on. So a politician doesn't actually need to be on the wards to know whether or not there are problems in the health service. I would suggest. Maybe I'm being too kind, I don't know. Patrick called. You can buy paracetamol for 35 pence at the shops. On prescription, it's £10. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier, Patrick. Drug companies are using the NHS here and in the UK as a cash cow. Yes, they are. Just like agency nurses and doctors, the cost of them is fundamentally unfair. Just 2 words about departmental budgets. The slok, says David H. Yes. Here's a controversial idea, Stu. How about treating people more like our pets? In other words, instead of people living life in constant pain, we help them pass away in dignity. And after a certain age, we have to have insurance if we wish to fight off the inevitable. Tough decisions have to be made. We're throwing away money, says Tom. It is controversial, Tom. I quite like the cut of your jib, and I'm all for dying with dignity. So I think that much more ought to be done as far as that's concerned. That's probably a whole different topic, though. But yeah, it is controversial what you're suggesting. I'm not saying it's wrong. I can imagine that an awful lot of people would disagree with you. Let's go to the lines. We've got John on. Hello, John.
When will they wake up to the fact that the hospital needs more funding? It's as simple as that. It's like they built this state-of-the-art hospital, everything, no worry about expense at all. It's like going out and buying a Rolls Royce and thinking, oh God, I can't afford to run it now. You follow what I mean?
Yes.
And, it's just ridiculous. I've been in 3 times. I've had 2 hips and a knee, and I'm now on the waiting list for the second knee.
Yes.
I've been on the waiting list for a few months, and when I started, it's roughly 12 months. But there's so many people there with medical knowledge being told what to do by people who have no medical knowledge, and all they can do is push a pen.
Well, isn't that the root issue then, rather than the fact that it's underfunded? Is the funding being spent on too many pen pushers and not enough medics?
Yeah, okay. But if you're going to keep the pen pushers in place, then you've got to provide more funding. Because next year it's going to be an overspend as well. Either that, or they're going to have to cut down on the expense, and therefore the service to the public will cut down.
So, I mean, in an ideal world, then what we'd do is that we'd cut down on the number of administrators, maybe, save the money that way, keep the frontline services, and stay within budget.
Yeah, and one other thing, I've said it time and time again on your programme, bring back a matron to run the whole thing, and it would run like clockwork.
Ideally Hattie Jakes as well, I think. All right, John, thank you for your call. Stuart, it'd be interesting to know how many at the hospital are medical staff and how many are not. Apparently in the UK, over half are admin staff, says Robbie. That just feels, I'm not an expert, it just feels too high. I was married to a nurse once, so I've got the inside track on it, or I did. It's a long time since mine. Dave called. It's a recurring theme every time this subject comes up in conversation. The number of people who get sent away to see a consultant but end up on a wasted journey. They go away, usually accompanied, so that's at least 2 return flights and accommodation. When they get there, the consultant doesn't have the right paperwork from Nobles. It must be costing a fortune, and all because they can't link up the systems and get the right paperwork across. Somebody that I know talked about that just after Christmas, up at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever to get over to Liverpool. I think it was a flight, I'm not sure. And got there and waited for an hour for the appointment. You know, it was the appointment was an hour overdue. Was seen by a consultant for 5 minutes and did not got the right X-rays or something like that. I seem to remember was the story. I might have it wrong. So I had to come home. Now, that was 5 minutes inconvenience for the surgeon, but it was a whole day for my friend. And, you know, a loss of a day's pay as well at work and all sorts of problems like that. The system does need fixing as far as things like that are concerned. Stuart, a lot of fault lies with poor managers. The staff don't stay due to poor morale and the temps go in and out like it's a revolving door up there for staff. OK. Wirral NHS reckon on Radio 4 programme £541,000 saved by banning over-the-counter medicines on prescription, says Irene. Well, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? There have been people sent away for blood tests. What a joke. Kate Beecroft, get a grip. I've always had a great service from the blood clinic. Nobles, it's surprising how busy a clipboard under your arm can make you look. We call it board arc. These people all seem to be in twos, says Howard.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should it be mandatory for boat owners of pleasure craft to have third-party insurance for their vessels? It's something the Department of Infrastructure wants to see introduced. If the harbour (pleasure craft) insurance bylaws are approved by Tynwald this month, all vessels berthed in the island's marinas and outer harbours will be required to have the appropriate cover. I always assumed that they did for some reason. I'm not sure quite why, but there you go. The bylaws would also apply to visiting boats and vessels launched from slipways. Those who don't take out the relevant cover could be left facing a fine of up to £5,000. What do you think about this? Should it be mandatory for all harbour users to have third-party insurance for their vessels? Let's see your comments on this. Hey boy, I agree this should be insured, but how's it going to be policed? Pointless otherwise, says G. Well, that's a fair comment, and quite often we pass legislation, but we don't seem to have enough people policing changes like this. I would imagine it's a relatively easy job as far as pleasure craft are concerned. They're all going to be concentrated in, 3 or 4 areas around the island, I suppose. So, we could have some sort of an officer checking on all the things and making sure that people have got valid certificates of insurance or whatever. Hi, Stu. I must say that I'm surprised that boat owners in the harbour haven't had to have insurance already. Can I also add, though, off topic, that I'd like to have it made illegal to walk a dog off a lead apart from on private land or beaches. This might help with the dog fouling problem, says Ian. OK. That's a good idea for boat owners. Insurance. Now bring on insurance for push-bike riders, says Jewin. Yes, well. Another one from Frank. Hey boy, maybe the DOI should get their own house in order before making threats of £5,000 fines for not having boat insurance. Ramsey Harbour's man in mooring chain was broken by their contractors, never repaired. It's never cleaned of the wooden rubbish washed down river that damages boats. Its banks and pathways are covered in dog eggs. Add to that abandoned boats with unpaid harbour fees, rusting trailers and general eyesores. I have boats, pay the fees, yet get nothing back. So sort it. Clean it before making threats. That from Frank. Thank you, Frank. Commenting here. There's a job for Frank. Less texting rubbish. He'd have plenty of time to clean up all these places that he's complaining about. Fact. Now, you can't argue amongst yourselves. That's not the plan at all. Have they made provision for visiting vessels? Although a good idea for insurance, will it discourage visiting vessels, visiting any of the ports on the island? Thought the powers that be were trying to build a regular holiday trade. That from Howard. Well, it's a bit like saying, Howard, we are welcoming more and more bikers, and it doesn't matter whether you've got insurance or not. If the rules are changed so that you've got to have insurance, I don't think it's unreasonable, to be honest. I wonder, though, why it's been brought in. After 5,000 years of people visiting the Isle of Man by small boat, why all of a sudden it's been decided that they need to have insurance. And I wonder if there's a bit more to this, maybe. I wonder whether or not, as Frank said, there are all sorts of wrecks and derelict boats and things around. Is this a mechanism whereby the department can say, right, it's got no insurance and nobody's been able to prove they've got insurance, and we do have the right under these bylaws to actually seize the vessel, so we're going to do that. So that, it tidies the whole thing up for us legally so that we can tidy the whole thing up physically. I don't know. Maybe it's just me trying to find a conspiracy theory where none actually exists, but it's a thought. Boat insurance, well, there was a boat that did quite a bit of damage to the harbour lately. Yes. I don't think you'd call the Ben a pleasure craft, though, necessarily, would you? Robert called, I think insurance is great, but there are a lot of people who, especially older people, have a small boat with an outboard motor and use it to go fishing during the summer. But with this, the insurance companies will cash in and it'll price people like that out of being able to have a boat. Well, yes, I suppose so, but if you're working to such a tight budget that you can't afford to insure something, then maybe you can't afford to do it. I don't know. Is that harsh? Like I say, it's not necessarily the insurance in case your thing sinks. It's if it does damage to somebody else's thing. And I know that in aviation, because I fly small planes, and I think that there is no overarching legislation that says that you've got to be insured, but I think most places that you want to land, it is a stipulation. I presume that that's the case at Ronaldsway. I know that years and years ago you used to be able to land at RAF military bases if you'd got prior permission, but you had to have something like 5 million quid's worth of insurance to be able to do it, and people were cutting up about that. But I think that that's one of the stipulations. I assume that Ronaldsway the same. You've got to have insurance if you want to land or taxi around there. And let's face it makes sense, because I could taxi a little Cessna that's worth 15,000 quid into the side of an Airbus or something like that, and do £1 million worth of damage. So it only makes sense, I think, that people are insured against those sorts of things. Derek Corley said in Peel there are lots of working boats moored along the wall on both sides of the harbour. Are they going to be hit with an extra charge because of this? Well, it does say pleasure craft. It does say it's pleasure craft insurance. So if it's a working boat, I assume that that's outside of the remit of this legislation. Stu, it's not just insurance. I think the boat has to have a current small craft survey before you can get a policy. Right. Okay, well, I suppose that would make it quite expensive. But there again, you've got to say that, there are certain things. It's like, people say, well, I can't afford to maintain the car. Well, yeah, but the rest of us can't afford to have badly maintained cars on the road. So if you can't afford to maintain a car or a boat or insure either, then really you can't afford to have it on the road or on the water, surely. And that might seem a bit harsh, but, I think that there has to be a limit to how far people are prepared to go with things like this. Bring it on. I have my boat insured the last 16 years. Good on you. Okay. Insurance could include call-out charges for lifeboat rescue costs, says Tom. I assume that there isn't a charge for a lifeboat rescue if it all goes. I don't know. I mean, certainly you'd want to donate a few quid to the cause, wouldn't you, if you'd been rescued by a lifeboat? But I don't know whether or not anybody actually gets charged for things like that. You see, I don't do boats. I can get seasick on Oncombe Park Pleasure Lake, on the boating lake, so boats have never really appealed to me. I don't really know much about it at all. It's a great idea to have boats compulsorily insured. Then the people with wrecks lying in the harbour might be forced to shift them to make room for the ones who are paying for their insurance. That from John. Well, I wondered whether or not that was maybe, quietly the intention of this, that it's not that they're worried necessarily about damage happening that isn't insured. It's more a case of giving them a mechanism to get rid of things that they don't want to have there anymore. Stu, what owners of boats that object to third-party boat insurance fail to see is that they're personally liable for damage caused by their boat, for example, worn ropes, brake, etc. If they've got no insurance, they could be taken to court. The Small Claims Court, which is relatively cheap and easy. Regulations already in place for removal of derelict boats. Practically all visiting and commercial vessels will have insurance. I thank you. George called. It's only a matter of time before they come up with a brainwave in the Keys. That means parents will have to get their children insured before they let them play in the sea. Well, before they let them play anywhere. Conkers. You could have somebody's eye out. Let's go to the lines. We've got Wilf on from Ramsey talking about insurance for boats. Hello, Wilf.
Well, it's a very, very simple question that I asked Dr. Allenson to ask today. I don't know how he got on, because he's fighting in my corner. He doesn't think it's right that all these boats should be insured. Now, I've got a boat in the harbour. It's not insured. And the thing is, if it has to be insured, and everybody has to be insured, to be in the harbour, I've had the letter, and it says to be insured for the amount to $2 million.
Yes.
Right? Now then, when a visiting yachtsman comes, the first thing he would do is phone up the harbour office and say, where would you like me to put my boat?
Yes.
But the first thing the harbourman must say to him, now, if this is the case, are you insured to $2 million?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, no, right, you can't come in here then.
Yeah, well, that seems fair to me.
Sail away somewhere.
Yeah, well, that's the way it works, though, Wilf, isn't it?
Simple enough, isn't it?
Well,
What's
kind
good
of.
for one is good for another.
Yes. I'm not quite sure the point that you're making. Are you saying that you don't think they'll do that with visitors where they're actually going to do it?
If we've got to pay it,
oh yeah,
residents of the Isle of Man.
Yeah. I mean, that's the legislation that anybody that wants to use the harbours has got to have insurance. So it would be the same for visitors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if they're not insured, then they shouldn't be allowed in.
Well, they won't be.
Oh, they won't be.
No, as I understand it, no. It will.
Then their law then.
Yeah.
They want to forget it if they want to have visitors.
No, it's just that they're only going to welcome people that have got insurance. It's like I said about, the TT. We want visiting bikers to come, but not if they're not insured.
Well, let's put it another way. The harbour is like a church.
Oh.
It's a refuge.
Yes.
It cannot be refused entry if they're in trouble.
No, well, that's a different thing, though.
If they're fighting their way in an easterly gale,
yeah,
they can't say, "Have you got insurance?"
No, but that's an emergency situation. That's a whole different thing. That's a red herring, Wilf. You know it is. I mean, if I declared an emergency, if I declared a Mayday while I was flying around in a little Cessna somewhere over the Isle of Man, right, I could land on Oncon cricket pitch if I was declaring an emergency. But it would be very frowned upon if I did it as a matter of course.
Yeah, but they suppose they come rushing in with a boat and rushed into somebody else and did a lot of damage, and they're not insured.
Just get some insurance, Wilf. It'll not cost you a lot, and you are a triple millionaire, aren't you?
Well, so they tell me.
Howard, yes, you're there.
Just on the insurance thing for boats, etc., the grown-up boats.
Yeah.
Well, my hobby is radio control model boats.
Oh, yes.
And I'm obliged to have insurance. I've got £5 million. I think some sort of small thing like that, model boats.
Yeah.
But going around the various places where we sail, or even going across, which I do, they still ask you, have you got insurance?
Sure.
It's not so much for the physical damage to the boats, as in the grown-up ones.
Yeah, a consequential loss, yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, you come to, if there's people on board the other boat and they get hurt, it's what we're looking to is a public liability insurance.
Well, it's the same with model aircraft, remote control model aircraft. And usually if you're a member of a reputable club, then you get insurance as part of your membership.
That's right. As I say, you can, and I do, purchase insurance each year, and it covers me automatically for $5 million, and it comes under the heading of public liability insurance, which covers a multitude of sins.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that when you think about it, you just think, well, actually, it makes perfect sense that, what would happen if I wasn't insured and something went wrong? All right, Howard, we're running out of time, so I need to move on, but thank you for your call.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Dean design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks to everyone who took part in the programme. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays. Or you can get your thoughts to us via Facebook or Twitter using the hashtag MRTalkingHeads. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com. And if there's anything you think we should be discussing on the programme, why not suggest it by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.